Give people a few minutes to come in.
And for folks who have just arrived, if you want to share your name and your affiliation, we'd love to learn who is with us tonight. So feel free to use that chat box.
Great to see folks. Thanks for joining us at 6 p.m.
A
We haven't done an
dark
evening
6
event
p.m.
in quite a while, so I hope everybody had a good day and is energized to talk about social capital. Hoping some people have a glass of wine to enjoy.
Oh, this was good.
We needed a playlist today, Sarah. We didn't think of that.
I know. Welcome, everyone. For those just arriving, please use the chat box to share your name and the organization or affiliation you're with. We're so excited to have you all join us.
Leah, nice to see you here in your new role.
Hi, Carolyn. It's nice to see you too. Sorry, I have my camera up because I feel like I've
Totally understand. I say "see" in quotes.
Also very excited to hear Sam speak. Sam's one of our grantee partners, and very, very, very excited to hear what's in store for tonight.
Awesome. Thanks for joining. Sarah, do we feel ready to get started? Do you want to give it another minute?
I think we might be ready.
Great. So we're going to jump in. So glad you're all here. Welcome, everyone. My name's Carolyn Shaughnessy. I'm the Director of Network Engagement at the Social Innovation Forum, and we're really excited to be here with you all today to learn about social capital and better understand how young people and adults can be provided opportunities to expand their networks and connect with and learn from others who are not easily accessible in their communities. We're in a time that feels particularly isolating, so I'm thrilled to actually be here with all of you tonight, even if it's on screen, and really appreciate you joining. So just because we're on Zoom together, I want to begin with just a few nuts and bolts. We just ask that you mute your microphone, but we encourage you to participate in the chat function at any time during this session. We're going to be using the chat function for questions, and you should feel free to put questions in the chat, and our an SIF team member is monitoring, and we're going to answer your questions after both our speakers conclude their remarks during a Q&A. This session will be recorded and sent to you along with slides after the event. So I want to start by giving a big thank you to the Mass Mutual Foundation for the support of this track on strengthening financial health through building and increasing social capital. I'd also like to take a moment to recognize the Boston HERC for the work they do every day to support first-generation youth as they access higher education and go on to thrive. Boston HERC continued their everyday work while completing the most intensive part of SIF's accelerator, which we know in a normal year is extremely demanding. This has not been a normal year. Boston HERC and our 2020 cohort managed so much these last months. They remain deeply engaged as a member of the SIF cohort. They actively work to strengthen their capacity to connect and uplift their communities in a time of great need. And we are truly grateful for all of your hard work. Finally, a big thank you to the SIF team for being nimble, adapting to working remotely, which we've now been doing for many months. We know it's not been simple, particularly for an organization that really thrives on personal connection. We had to pause this event series back in March, but are really pleased to be back together for our third social issue talk, but our first social issue talk in the virtual world. We are also so grateful tonight to our keynote speaker, Boston City Councilor at Large, Julia Mejia, for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from her very soon. Before we start, I'd just like to share a bit more about SIF for those who might be new to our work. Our mission is to create positive social change in Greater Boston by engaging leaders, strengthening organizations, and building networks. We do this by engaging and informing funders and investors about social issues and also about the most promising solutions to these social issues, helping to create avenues for directing resources most effectively for social impact. We also educate and support leaders of nonprofit organizations like the Boston HERC to build capacity so that they can deliver the most effective solutions to social issues. And most importantly, we intentionally make connections and build relationships across communities, across diverse communities, so people on both sides of the equation, the investors and supporters and our nonprofit leaders, can help each other to generate significant social change, all very aligned with today's social issue talk focused on the value of social capital. We like to think about our work as taking a marketplace approach to social change, where SIF is creating the marketplace and inviting people with all sorts of skills, resources, connections, expertise, and needs, and helping them to make connections, to leverage their strengths, and to learn from one another. Being here today, all of you are part of this marketplace. So we hope you'll learn from our experts and consider finding ways to support our nonprofit leaders who are on the ground every day tackling these social issues. We are excited to be here tonight, shining a spotlight on Boston HERC, an organization whose work to close the opportunity and achievement gap for first-generation students of color is a critical lever in breaking the cycle of poverty. The topic for our conversation is social capital. Who has it? Why do we need it? And how do we build it? Support from family, friends, neighbors, and community organizations is essential in navigating complex financial situations that many encounter in their lives. Connections in the community can open doors to jobs, reveal practical financial advice, uncover paths to reasonable loans, and other resources to help meet people's daily obligations and goals. Boston HERC's Passport to College model is a social capital framework that nurtures the students who are looking to build the right connections with their peers and mentors to achieve success in schools and in their careers. It nurtures the relationships of the Passport coaches who are wanting to give back and provide a path forward for students. In our current social climate, we're seeing social capital evolve as things move to a digital space. I trust this won't be forever, but our networks and connections feel looser and I think a little bit untethered. We want to keep attention on the value of social capital, especially for first-generation youth who are most impacted by opportunity and achievement gaps. I want to make sure before I go any further that Councilor Mejia has joined us.
Yes.
Wonderful. then we'll go on to the real reason we're here today. I have the pleasure of introducing City Councilor Julia Mejia, City Councilor at Large, City of Boston, who will be delivering our keynote address tonight. Councilor Mejia is the first Latina ever elected to the Boston City Council starting in 2020, and she won the election by the margin of a single vote. Julia serves with the reminder that nothing about us without us is for us. She is a first-generation student who graduated from Boston Public Schools, becoming the first in her family to graduate high school and college. Julia is a graduate of Dorchester High School and holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from Mount Ida College. She has a lifelong passion for government accountability and civic engagement. Julia created and led a civic engagement group focused on voter registration and was the founder of a nonprofit education network. Through her work, Julia has become enriched by the experiences of bringing people together from all walks of life. So please join me, maybe in the chat, in giving a warm welcome to City Councilor Julia Mejia.
Oh my God. I am trying to find the right lighting so that you can see me better. Is that better? Because before I saw some halos and all this stuff that would have been really disruptive to my presentation. And while I do glow, I didn't want you all to be concerned about the extra lighting that I had. So I hope you can see and hear me okay?
Great.
Excellent. Great. Thank you so much. So I am really excited to be here, and I feel really honored to be joining you all today and speaking on behalf of my own journey and how my journey is so parallel to HERC and the work and the amazing work that they do. So I just wanted to first thank Samuel Acevedo for giving me an opportunity to be here with you tonight, and to you all for inviting me. So I'm going to go through my experience as a first-generation college student, and I think for you all to really understand what this journey was like for me, I think it's important for you to know that I came to this country at the age of 5, and I was raised by a mother who was undocumented for a period of time. My mom didn't finish the 4th grade, so she came here in search of the American dream, like so many of immigrants do, and we quickly realized that that American dream was really a nightmare. Because I had to assume the responsibility of translating for my mother and everyone else in the neighborhood. So I became that kid that everyone brought with them to the doctor's appointments, to the welfare office. And as a result of doing that, I missed a lot of school. So when you take on those responsibilities, because you're either trying to survive or get by, the life of an immigrant, and particularly a young person like myself who was already feisty, everybody took me along because they knew if they brought me, they were going to get what they were looking for, because I was fighting for everybody, even at the age of 9. And I'm not sure if you can tell which one am I in this crowd, but I am the one right here. Well, you can't see me, but anyways, I am the one who's looking directly at the camera, because I was always camera ready. I don't know about everybody else, but I was ready. You see how everybody was looking the other way? I was looking directly at the camera. And I've ever since have been that way. My mom, like as I mentioned, was undocumented for a period of time. She was a factory worker. And she and I cleaned offices together. And when I think most kids can relate to this, whenever anyone would call my mom's house, because I was acting up, I would intercept those phone calls, and I would pick up the call and I would translate to my benefit. And I would say, oh no, they're just saying that I'm doing great, when in reality, I hadn't been to school in like a week. And I was able to get away with a lot, including dropping out of school, because my mom did not speak the language. And yes, I am like literally letting you into my world, because this is my Farrah Fawcett look, okay? I went to every single Boston public school you could imagine. We bounced around from place to place. It wasn't until I was in the 5th grade that we had a place to call home, and that I was in one place long enough to make friends. And so that is the reality that a lot of young people are still facing here today. Housing instability is real. And so with my Farrah Fawcett look, when I talk about becoming the first person in my family to graduate high school, it was a big deal because I was almost 20 by the time I made it out. And the reason why I share that is because while I was in high school, I was working multiple jobs. I was still the official translator. And to be honest with you, I was making more money selling shoes and cleaning offices than my mom was making as a factory worker. And since I had already dropped out, going to college was definitely not a career path for me. No one was really talking to me about college because I was already more considered a dropout. And so everybody was like trying to figure out how they can keep me in school. I had a guidance counselor, her name is Miss Guerin. And she saw something in me that I think most folks did not. And there were times when I would play hooky, which is skip school, and I would go work at Tom McCann's shoe store. And there were times when she would go to my job and pick me up and bring me back to school because that's where I belonged. And it was those moments, right, that really helped me recognize that there were people out there who saw something in me, who saw that I had value. There was one opportunity that I had. To the next slide, please. I was one day, I'm a storyteller. Are you guys all with me? Can you shake your heads? And we're like engaged in this conversation? Okay. Because I'm bringing you on this journey, and it's so similar to a lot of the work that HERC does. And I want you to see Miss Guerin was one of my passport coaches in many ways because she intervened and would pick me up and take me back to school, which is where I belonged. And one of those days that she did that, Liz Walker, who if you don't know who she is, you should be ashamed of yourselves and Google her. She was the first African-American news anchor in the state of Massachusetts, ever. And there I was, almost 19. Yeah, I was 19 at the time. I had already dropped out, and I didn't even know what college was. I was just lucky that I was almost out of high school, and that was good enough for me because my mom didn't even get that far. So she went to my high school and shared her story about what life was like for her as an African-American woman navigating this, the news industry. And she wasn't there that long, but the amount of time that she was there was enough to interrupt my entire cycle of poverty. Because there I was in the auditorium listening to this woman, and all I wanted to know was how I could be just like her. How could I, someone who was selling shoes, who had already dropped out of high school, how could I be her? And my guidance counselor, Ms. Guerin, said you had to go to college. And I'm like, what is that? That sounded difficult. I had to take my SATs. I had to do all of these things that I wasn't on that career path. So I did that. I think I got whatever scores that they would give you for making your name right, like spelling your name right, whatever points that you would get for doing that, I got those points and a few other little points. I was never really good at test taking, but what ended up happening was that I got accepted to 2 schools. One was Mount Ida College, and the other one was Salem State or Fitchburg. I forget which one it was. It was one or the other. But Salem State or Fitchburg, they wanted me to go through like remedial courses, and they felt like I had potential, but in order for me to go there, I was gonna have to take on extra courses before I can get fully enrolled. And I had to work, and I said, no, I can't do that. I'm gonna go to the private school, even though I didn't have any money, but I was gonna take a sacrifice. And I ended up going to Mount Ida because they accepted me as I was, right? I didn't have to worry about those courses. And, you know, later now as an adult and with the debt and everything, I could understand it would have been so much easier for me to, you know, go through that route, but I didn't have a college, I didn't have a passport. to help me make that decision at that point. So I ended up somewhere else. But because of Liz Walker, I can say to you that I was able to graduate high school and go to college, and she interrupted my entire cycle of poverty, and I would not be here today in front of you had it not been for her story that inspired me to recognize what is possible for myself, because there was no one at the time at my high school talking to me about college or even what career options I had, right? And so the fact that this woman, unbeknownst to her, she saved my entire life. And I saw her 10 years later. No, actually, I saw her, I did a news report on her when I was in college, and then I got a job at MTV. I got a job covering the presidential elections. I became a reporter. After serving my community, I moved to New York, and I decided that if I was gonna make it anywhere, I was gonna make it in New York, because I wasn't gonna get any opportunities here in Boston, I'll tell you that much. And I got a job covering the presidential elections, and I had the opportunity to travel the entire country, getting young people excited about the electoral process. And when I got my job at MTV, 10 years later, I left Liz Walker a voicemail. And I said, you probably don't remember me, but back in, X amount of years ago, you went to my high school and you shared your story, and I became a reporter because of you, and thank you so much. Because of you, I am here. And I just said, thank you, and that was it. So I had an amazing career at MTV. I covered the presidential elections. I pushed MTV because every space that I've been in, I've changed. I was the first urban Latina reporter in the channel, to work for MTV. And I also changed the conversation while there. So all the stories that I pitched were to highlight the issues that urban youth were facing. And every time anyone would ask me, why this issue? What does this have to do with Iowa? And I couldn't understand why every single story I pitched to my producers had to do something with Iowa. And I'm like, why? This is about Black and brown kids. What's this? Who cares about what's happening in Iowa? This is happening to our people. And they said to me, and this always stuck, is that it wasn't relevant. And unless it had national appeal, it was not worth sharing. And I pushed, and I went back, and I did research. Back then, Google had just came onto the scene. So I was able to Google some things, and Lexis I had access to. So I had access to all these little tools, and I came back and I pitched stories with data and numbers. And all of my stories, every single story that I pitched was produced on MTV. I did one about the census. I did one about representation. I did one about a young Latina who was covering the Democratic Convention and how she was selected. But everything that I told was about the issues that were impacting my people. And so I was able to do that within a network that was not ready for me 20 years ago. And fast forward to, and I share this because every single step of the way, I've come across a lot of roadblocks, but I just continue to persevere despite it all. And I think that that's what a lot of the young people in our Boston public schools are dealing with today, is that they face roadblock after roadblock, but despite these roadblocks, they always persevere with the social capital that they have and the network of the folks who are there to kind of guide them along. So anyways, I am one of those, I'm just gonna keep it simple, and I'm gonna fast forward to, I saw Liz Walker. I know we're getting ready to my one vote win, but let me just tell you what happened before that point. I came back to Boston, and in 2008, 2009, I was invited to an event. I was working on a project on anti-poverty policies for low-income women. And I had the opportunity to see Liz Walker. And she was the keynote speaker at an event that I had the opportunity to be at. And she was gonna be there. And I remember I had on a little gray suit with a little hot pink tunic, and it was my professional little outfit. And I went up to her and I said to her, the only reason why I'm standing here in front of you with a business suit on and as a professional was because you shared your story in my high school. And I was so inspired by what you shared and what you did that I decided to graduate high school and I decided to go to college. And I would not be here today as a professional had it not been for your story. And she said to me, you know, I'm so glad that you are sharing this with me because I often share my story and I never know if I'm making a difference. And I never know if I am making an impact. But I needed to hear that today because now I know that my story, and when I do share it, it does make a difference. And I don't think that people realize the impact that we have on people's lives. And I think that's why I've dedicated my entire career to working with young people, because we just never know the difference that we can make just by offering an opportunity to speak to someone or guiding them in a different direction or steering them or opening a door or creating an opportunity for them to have a job interview. Like, we just never know the lives that we're changing and saving just by being and speaking, right? I share that because running for office for me was really an opportunity to change the conversation. You know, I grew up in a life of poverty. I'm a single mother, just like my mom was. I broke barriers and overcame obstacles, and I still continue to do so. Even though I'm a city councilor, I'm still dealing with the same issues that I was dealing with before I became a city councilor. The only thing is that now I have 700,000 other people that I'm responsible for, plus whatever issues I'm dealing with, right? But running for office for me was really an opportunity to change the conversation. And no one thought I was going to win, including myself. And when I set out to run, I did so because I really wanted people to see what it looks like when we believe in the possibilities, right? And I always said that for me, it wasn't just about winning. It was really about the how we would win that would matter to me. I said that I would have rather have lost and uplifted my people than to neglect us and win along the way. And so I remember, Samuel, my first public appearance was on February the 4th, 2019, and I was in front of a group of, high-end Latinos. And I always have this thing that I call the imposter syndrome. I always feel like I don't belong in these spaces. And I remember being in that space, and it was the first time that I had to share my story. And I was already measuring myself up to other people. And I saw the caliber of candidates that I was up against. And I decided that I was not going to leave myself at the door so other people can feel comfortable. I decided that there was too much at stake, and that no matter my pedigree or no matter what I didn't have, what I did have was my story. And what I did have was my perseverance. And what I did have was my ability to overcome obstacles despite whatever came my way. And I think those things were the things that kept me strong and reminded me of who I was there to fight for. And so when I think about my journey and when I think about being a first generation college student, a first generation, I'm the first person in my family to even buy a house. My mom grew up, I grew up with my mom on Section 8, and I took my mother out of Section 8 a few years ago. Like, when I talk about being the first of so many things, I don't want to be the last, right? And everything that we do and the work that we do is really about making sure that we're building the bench and that we're creating opportunities for other young people to step into their power. And that we're being really intentional about what it is that we're going to say, in the rooms that we walk into. What do we want people to think, feel, and do as a result of being in these spaces? How do we want to inspire the next generation to succeed despite everything that they hear about themselves? We need to challenge how we lead with deficit language, because there is strength in our struggle. right? We have young people right now who are deciding and debating whether or not they're gonna go to college or if they're gonna go to work, because they believe those are the only two options that they have available to them, right? And so what I'm hoping for in my conversation with you all tonight, and what you hope, and I hope that you get out of your experience with me here this evening, is that at the end of the day, when you think about the role that our passport coaches play. Can we go to the next slide? I believe there's a next slide here that I get to. This is my mom. My mom, and she became a super voter. And this would be the last, I'm a storyteller, y'all. When I started working at MTV, I started working at MTV on El Día de los Reyes, which is Three Kings Day, 20 years ago, right? When I got my swearing in ceremony was on Three Kings Day, 20 years later. You want to talk about like how the world comes in full circle. Where I became a US citizen was the same space where I became sworn in as a city councilor. And so I think those moments of the immigrant experience, the first generation students, like those are the moments that we have to hold on to and remember what is possible. And we're now at a moment when we look at COVID, a moment of reckoning. We need to realize that our students right now are sitting in homes with no internet, with no access to support, with parents who don't know how to speak the language, who are struggling right now. And those students now are looking to us and making sure that we're creating a pathway for them to pursue their American dream. And as I stand here as a one vote wonder, now as a single mom who has a rock star little 10-year-old daughter who's looking up to me, right? My hope is that HERC and the work that HERC is going to do, my daughter will be first generation, like, because she was born in this country. I'm still an immigrant, right? So she'll be going through HERC, and she'll be going on to college, and she'll have a passport coach. She'll have me to guide her along the way, but she'll also have HERC there pushing her and directing her and giving her the type of support that she needs so that she can be successful too. So I want to talk a little bit about Yesenia, I believe, right? From the Margarita Muñez. I would like to say that the Margarita Muñez high school, my niece went to the McCormick middle school, and she was at the Margarita Muñez. And unfortunately, again, because we don't have enough HERCs all over the city to support our students, she didn't finish. But that was the school that she was at, and she would have, and she still could be. There's still a lot of work that we need to do in that space. So, but like Yesenia, Yesenia and I are the same, right? Yesenia is a first generation college Latina, right? She was raised by a single mom, like me. We both held a lot of responsibilities. I had to clean, cook, watch my little brother, and work 2 to 3 jobs, right? Just to help put food on the table. We both experienced academic challenges. I had interrupted education, and then I dropped out. So it's taken me a little bit longer, but here I am. We both experienced emotional trauma growing up, and worked multiple jobs to make our ends meet. But nonetheless, what we both keep doing is moving ahead and moving forward. And despite all of the things that we don't have, what we do have, well, or at least what I had along the way, was that support and people cheering me on along the way, which is what I see the passport coaches being able to do. And this is Nisha Gonzalez, who was Yesenia and still continues to be Yesenia's passport coach, who has every single moment, every single time that Yesenia was feeling like giving up, there was Nisha with a resource, an opportunity, a word of advice, and bringing her right back into the space, right? And so those moments, when you think about interrupting the cycle of poverty for so many students in the city of Boston, it's those moments that we need to continue to draw on. It's those passport coaches that are going to keep our students literally on their pathway to success, right? Look, I should get a little cute with my little analogies, passport, and they're flying into the right direction. But no, really, I think that when you think about HERC and you think about the work, I feel like while I'm the poster child for the One Vote Wonder, I'm also the poster child for HERC, because the work that they do, had there been a HERC back in the day, I probably would have ended up at Harvard, right? I probably would have been so much more, I still probably would have had my same quirks here and there, but at the end of the day, I know that I am exactly where I need to, I am exactly where I need to be, and I am so grateful for every single thing that I've had to endure along the way, because those things have informed every single decision that I make today as a city councilor. And I wouldn't take away any of those moments, because that's what shapes who I am. And I think that is the beauty of what it looks like when you can say that you're comfortable in your own skin. And it's taken me this long to get here. And I just hope that it won't be the same for so many other students.
Thank you so much, Councilor Mejia. You are a storyteller. No question, that was amazing. And I can't really imagine the numbers of young people that you'll inspire. And then they'll believe in the possibility. We should all have a Ms. Garone and a Liz Walker, and many, many more people like them to be role models. And thank God for HERC. I'm with you there. So I'm gonna shift us for a moment. And I'd like to introduce Sam Acevedo, the founding executive director of Boston HERC, the Higher Education Resource Center, which is a 2020 social innovator and is one of the organizations addressing the issues that Councilor Mejia laid out. Beyond Sam's work at the Boston HERC, he also serves as co-chair of the Boston School Committee's Opportunity and Achievement Gap Task Force. He previously served on the 2015 BPS Superintendent Search Committee, and he did mention before this meeting that he was up till 2 a.m. in a school committee meeting last night. Like most of the HERC team, Sam is among the first in his family to earn a college degree. And apart from his role as executive director of the Boston HERC, Pastor Sam serves as volunteer pastoral staff at the Congregación León de Judá. Please join me in welcoming Sam Acevedo.
If any of you have ever tried to follow Julia Mejia, I think you will appreciate just how tough a thing that is. But it's also, Julia, a great, great privilege. I really feel like, we're on sovereign ground right now, hearing that story. So first of all, I was at that meeting. I was in the back of the room. All the Dominican word is all the tutumpotes, all of the power players, they had seats in the room. Yeah. But, I was happy to be a fly clinging to the back of the room when you were there to announce your candidacy. I was there to witness what the room thought of you before you spoke and what people thought of you after you spoke. And I think I approached you that night. And really, I believe that was the night you won the election. It began there. Actually, it began when Liz Walker connected with you years ago. And you were in your 20s and had yet to complete high school. I guess what I want to draw from that tonight, I don't need to, go any further to explain just how proud I am of Julia and how much we love her and what she, just not her, but what she represents. But what she represents to us, and I'm pleased to be here tonight, accompanied by several members of the Boston Higher Education Resource Center board. Thank you. Hopefully tonight, you're getting a huge after story to the many befores that you are enabling. And tonight, I'm also, privileged to have in the room a lot of Liz Walkers, the Boston HERC Passport coaches, people like Chelsea and Melvin, Carolina de Jesus, who runs the Passport program, others who, I love Carolina, your note in the chat, but we try to encourage our coaches with stories like Julia's to remind them that we never know the one student in the classroom whose lives we are transforming simply by showing up. And folks, in a nutshell, that's the Boston Higher Education Resource Center's theory of change. We are driven to distraction, literally sleeplessness, as Carolyn was sharing, by not the idea, but the certainty that yes, Councilor Julia Mejia is exceptional, but she's not an exception. There are hundreds of Julia Mejias in Boston Public Schools alone. Hundreds of them. At places like Brighton High School, and English High School, and the Margarita Muniz Academy, and Charlestown High School in East Boston. Hundreds of them. We are driven by both the excitement and the fear, frankly, of missing out on this opportunity, and that the world would miss out on a Julia Mejia because there was someone, because of the calculus of injustice, did not have a disruptor connect with her and alter the trajectory of her life with a word of encouragement and with enabling her with the habits of the mind and the 21st century skills needed to just nudge. The brilliance was already in Julia. The power was already there. It was just a matter of speaking it into being and telling her that she was destined for greatness, which is our motto, destination greatness. And this is where we're hoping we can enlist you all. We want to connect more Naishas with Jasenias. We want to connect more Julias with Liz Walkers. Isn't it something that 30 years later, we're still at this? Last night, what we were doing at 2 o'clock in the morning was convincing Boston yet again that the children of Black and Latinx households deserve a place in the city's most elite schools. And that it was time to open the gates of opportunity for them. It took Boston City Council, I've never been in the school committee, rather, so more proud of them than I was last night. But do you see that there's so much more work to do, that we've barely begun this work? And you can help this work in many ways. The Boston Higher Education Resource Center, for instance, as we shared in our showcase back in May, there are several ways that we're hoping to make a deeper impact. And we're grateful for the Social Innovation Forum for helping us push in this direction. We're hoping that you can also be part of this. For instance, over the next 2 years, and we can show that slide, over the next 2 years, we're hoping that to serve more BPS high school students and alumni. From the 950 high school students and alumni that we served last year to 1,890, almost double over the next 2 years. Increase, it is now, in May, it was 9 schools. We're now at 10 Boston Public Schools, and we're hoping to grow to 12 over the next 2 years. Meanwhile, we want to serve these schools deeply. The existing schools that we serve more freshmen and sophomore at the 10 schools that we're already serving. Doing that is going to require, the next slide please, doing that is going to require that the Boston Higher Education Resource Center serve in breadth and depth and in its growth. This is going to require more passport coaches, more Liz Walkers, more Naisha Gonzalez's, more Chelsea Ann's, more Jessica Maxime's, more Melvin Reyes's. It's going to require more of them. It's going to require growing an alumni program that we just launched last year to make sure that we're not neglecting our students once they go into college. The idea is to have them get all the way through college and complete successfully. And also, of course, grow our organization's infrastructure, our development staff, and the technology and the infrastructure needed for us to sustain this growth. But apart from supporting us in any of these ways, supporting our growth in any of these ways, there are very simple, perhaps simpler ways that you could get in on the action and become a disruptor and become a Liz Walker yourself. For instance, we're looking for mentors. We just hired an AmeriCorps mentor coordinator. And we're very grateful that that Social Innovation Forum was critical to growing in that level of capacity. Those of you who are supporting SIF. But now we need mentors to connect with these alums once they're in college. We're also looking for people to tell their story. Julia has a fascinating story, but so do you. Each of you have an amazing story. And we'd love for you to join our career exploration panel, our story of struggle and success and inspiration with our students while we're connecting with them remotely. We're also looking for people who'd be willing to spend, say, an afternoon or a couple of afternoons now remotely from home, reviewing students' FAFSA forms or their college essays. That would be incredible. And it would also be remarkably meaningful if at your particular sector, whether it's you're in the health field or academia or in government, if there are internships that your or even opportunities for job shadowing at your job or in your career or in your sector, that could be transformative for the life of a young people. So there are many ways that you could get in on the action and many ways that you could help us find, discover, and inspire the Julia Mejias in BPS classrooms.
Sam, thank you so much. All at home, I'm sure, are clapping and cheering for you and Councilor Mejia. I just want to thank you both again for your time this evening and both sharing your stories and the incredible work of the Boston HERC. I'm going to just move us in quickly to a bit of Q&A. If folks from the audience, feel free to use the chat box if you have any questions. We would love to hear from you. We'll give folks just a minute or so. So I'll jump in and get us started then, and then folks can continue to use the chat box. But this is going to be a question for both Councilor Mejia and for Sam. You both have shared tonight how influential connections, networks, supports, and social capital are for young people. Would just love to hear from both of you. Sam, I know you shared many ways folks can get involved with the Boston HERC, but if there's any other ways that you could share with the audience in which folks can support young people in building that social capital and making connections in ways that they can support.
Well, I had, Miles Walker was a blue-eyed Irish 7th grade American history teacher who altered the trajectory of my life simply by telling me his story and entering into my world and convincing me that I had a place in his world. Social capital is about, someone venturing into a young person's world, being willing to do that, and serving as an agent, a coach, an ambassador to their world. I want to especially speak to people who are struggling with their privilege in this age of racial reckoning. And can I tell you, you've been entrusted with a wonderful and powerful thing. And if you can point your life experience, point your world to anyone, and what I rattled off tonight were opportunities to do that at the Boston HERC. If you called Councilor Mejia, she could probably point to 2,500 ways that you could do similar things. You can make forms to create connections. And any one of those connections could change a student's life.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of mentoring opportunities, but I think that there's sometimes people don't even realize that they're mentors. There's a lot of informal opportunities to actually help support students. And I'm just thinking outside the box, like people who, barbershops and hair salons and folks who can cultivate the next generation and utilize the time that they're spending with kids and to help inspire some thought, right? Even the person who does the bodega store, right? There's so many different informal mentors in our community, and then oftentimes we don't really create spaces to cultivate those relationships and to help them understand the formal roles that they can also play as mentors. I actually hosted a few weeks ago an event for some of our highest at-risk young men. Oftentimes, we talk about peer leaders. There's a lot of young people who already have a big safety net, but there are a lot of students who don't even have that. And one of the things that came to mind in that conversation is that, we have a lot of businesses and universities in the city of Boston, but we're not really utilizing them to their full potential. And that we can create more meaningful pathways to internships, paid internships, because not everyone has the privilege to do an internship just for the skills. Kids like me who are struggling to make ends meet and working 2 jobs while in high school just to put food on the table, I wasn't able to take advantage of any extracurricular activities because my life did not dictate that, right? So, but if someone offered me a paid internship where I can learn about a specific skill set that I knew was going to bring me out of poverty or create an opportunity for me to develop a different skill set, then maybe yes. I think that we need to invest more with financial capital and making sure that students, that we're removing barriers for young people to be engaged in extracurricular activities. And then I also think that, and I'm glad that Samuel talked about privilege. I also have to recognize that I have privilege too. And that privilege, it's not just about white privilege. You know, now that I'm a city councilor, I have space and access to opportunities and rooms that I probably would have never even walked into, you know. And I think that we and the folks who are listening in on this, especially the younger ones, as you start thinking about your own privilege and the opportunities that you have and the tables and the spaces that you happen to be in, always ask, how can I bring a young person into this space, right? I think that there's ways for us to cultivate the next generation of board members, the next generation of coalition builders, just by even inviting young people to have that opportunity just to be at that table, right? And I think that one of the things that I'm doing in my office is that we hosted a Civic Engagement Institute for youth this summer. We employed 12 young people across the city of Boston, and we created an opportunity for them to write their own public hearing orders. We, some of the youth that participated developed their own youth citywide town hall. And then we also had a cohort of young people who were learning about communications and utilizing social media as a way to raise awareness about the issues that they were struggling with. So I think that, you know, that building of that capacity is really important in terms of helping young people. I think we have an opportunity and a responsibility to be really mindful of what that looks like, and creating internships and entrepreneurship programs for youth at a younger age. You know, I don't think that you should have to wait until you're in college to learn about how to prepare a business. I think that, you know, young people, a lot of people study our culture, and then they package it and resell it to us as hip hop culture. And then, you know, we're rocking and spending tons of thousands of dollars on things that we were already doing until somebody came around our way and packaged it to us. Like, how can we create opportunities for young people to learn about entrepreneurship, and helping them tap into their own innovation, and utilizing their neighborhood, right, as a way to build their businesses or to build their capital, or to go to college and to learn that to do this, you have to go to college. I think that we're missing so many opportunities to engage youth. And I'm looking, as the chair of small business and workforce development, I'm looking for thought partners, and I'm opening up my doors for anyone who's listening in to help inform my thinking and to work in partnership with me on how do we really create solid pathways for college or career for young people who are first generation.
Councilor Mejia, thanks so much. I'm going to move us to one more question here. So this is from Syed Raza. As a student leader lobbying their administration for additional support and resources for first-gen college students, do you have any advice for how to hold higher ed institutions accountable and responsive to students' concerns?
Yes. So my freshman year at Mount Ida College, I think I started a little protest. And there was a college professor, God rest his soul. He said to me, you know, you could do a lot more if you work on the inside instead of just out, you know, protesting. And I was like, I didn't even know what he was talking about. So I ended up becoming an RA, a resident assistant. So I went on the inside so that I can help cause disruption and so that I can help change systems from the inside. And it was that experience that really taught me the power of organizing and creating an inside-outside strategy. So I think you're gonna need to identify some allies who are sensitive or at least sensitive or willing to join you, who are in the higher ups, and bring them in and create space for those who are living the realities to kind of convene together to push on systems change. You know, one thing I didn't, and this will be the last story that I tell, but there's another person that was a big, really instrumental in my life, and that was the bursar, my financial aid bursar at Mount Ida. And, you know, I had to repeat certain classes in my freshman year, but I had an award-winning personality. And she let me retake some of these courses, and she became my biggest ally. And if it wouldn't have been for her, I wouldn't have completed college. I would have had to drop out because I was not prepared for it. So you have to identify who your allies are within those institutions, and then find ways to bring them into the conversation, and then hold them accountable.
Thank you. Great questions and really strong answers. Appreciate that get on the inside, and Councilor Mejia, you've done that in lots of ways. You're on the inside. So I wish we had another hour, because I'm seeing lots of questions pop up in the chat, and would love to get to them all. But what I'm hearing is that Councilor Mejia and Sam both have very open doors. And what I would say is, if you have questions, you should reach out to them and ask them, because what I'm hearing today is they're willing to talk and build their networks, and use that to help young people build theirs. So I would encourage folks to take those questions right to the source. One of my team members put Boston HERC's prospectus in the chat, and I would encourage people to click on that and see the great work that they have done and are planning on doing in the coming 2 years. So that is there, and I would encourage you to see that. I'm grateful for the storytelling tonight. I'm tremendously grateful, and I know our whole team is, for the tremendous work both of you are doing for young people and for first generation students. You know, the power of hearing from first generation folks, hearing that story is tremendous. So a couple of things. We invite you to join us for our other social issue talks. Our next one is actually November 18th from 3 to 4 p.m. and it's going to focus on promoting physical activity for youth with disabilities, featuring our 2020 innovator, Adaptive Sports New England, and Dr. Mary Dubon, who is the attending physician of pediatric rehabilitation medicine and attending physician of the sports medicine division at Boston Children's Hospital. Again, if you're interested in learning more about Boston HERC, we encourage you to reach out to Sam and his team to schedule a call or a virtual coffee. This networking's harder right now, and so we would push everyone to just make that extra effort. One big thanks to our track partner, the Mass Mutual Foundation. I'm also going to give a shout out and just remind everyone to vote, because that one vote clearly matters. So everyone get out there, and just big thank you to everyone for coming tonight. And we look forward to seeing you at our next social issue talk. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Councilor Mejia.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Councilor Mejia. We love you, SIF.
Bye.
Right back at
So
you.
much. Take care.